Welcome to Boring History for Sleep, where the past whispers softly and bedtime begins with a story. Tonight, we journey to a time before beds, before clocks, before even candles were common. We slip into a stone cottage and curl up beside a crackling fire. This is what it felt like to sleep in the dark ages. It begins with the sound of wood splitting softly in the quiet. A dry crack, then the hush of embers settling deeper into themselves. You were already lying down, limbs folded into the shape of the day's fatigue, wrapped in a blanket that smells faintly of wool, of smoke, of something older than you can name. Around you, the air is still, except for the breathing of others slow, steady human, and the occasional rustle of straw beneath a restless leg or shifting shoulder. But it is the fire that holds your attention. Not loud, not roaring, just a small, steady glow on the hearth, pulsing gently like a heart learning how to dream. The night outside is the kind that swallows things. There are no lights in the windows, because there are no windows worth speaking of. It's just slits or shutters, sealed against the wind. The dark outside is heavy and whole, a black that wraps around the cottage like a second roof, pressing down at the eaves and seeping in between the cracks of the timber walls. You cannot see what lies beyond the door. Now, you cannot even imagine it clearly. It is just the world as it always is, when the sun is gone, deep, unknowable, and possibly waiting. But here inside, where the coals glimmer softly and cast lazy shadows across the low-ceiling beams, there is warmth. It's not the kind that chases the cold completely, but enough to make your skin remember softness, enough to ease the sharp edge of the chill that creeps in through your socks and up your spine. You curl tighter into your blanket, tug it over your shoulder, and listen to the sleepy language of the fire's crackles and sighs, its little bursts of orange breath, as the last of the kindling gives itself up to the night. The floor beneath you is hard, packed earth with a thin layer of hay that smells faintly sweet and faintly musty, like something both growing and dying. There is no mattress, no cushion, no feather bed, just the solid comfort of the ground. The closeness of the people sleeping beside you, and the warmth of the fire doing its quiet work. You are not alone. You are never alone at night. There are always others, family, neighbors. Sometimes travelers sleeping in one room, lined up like commas in the long sentence of the evening, breathing in rhythm, shifting in their sleep. Dreaming whatever people dream in times like these. Your body aches a little, not from anything particular, just from the weight of the day, the bending and lifting and walking and being.
Oh.
But the ache is a familiar one, and there is something oddly soothing in it, something that tells you have done enough, and now you are allowed to rest. Your hands are rough, your nails rimmed with a day's labor, but they are warm now, folded beneath your chin or tucked into the hollow at your stomach.
Ow.
The fire glows on the inside of your eyelids when you close them, and in that gentle reddish-black light you begin to drift. Sometimes the fire pops sharply, and someone murmurs in their sleep. Sometimes a log shifts and sends up a small plume of sparks, and in those moments, your eyes flutter open, just for a second, to see the world reshaped in flickering orange. The shadows on the wall dance like old ghosts, soft and lazy, not the frightening kind, but the sort that only mean to keep you company. The kind that live in every old house, the kind that watch over sleepers. The smell of smoke clings to everything: your clothes, your hair. It's the very walls of the cottage, and, though you've known it your whole life, tonight it smells especially kind, like warmth, like safety, like something solid in a world that often isn't. You breathe it in and let it settle in your lungs. You will smell like this in the morning. Your fingers will smell like this. Yeah. Even your dreams will carry its trace. There is no clock to mark the hours, no glowing numbers to measure the night. Time here is made of shadows, of the angle of the firelight on the rafters, of the rhythm of breath and the cold that creeps slowly in as the flames dwindle. You know you will have to rise before the sun to stoke the coals again and coax the new day out of them. But that is not yet. For now, the fire still glows, still hums, still tells its quiet stories to the dark. And so you sleep, not in silence, but in softness, in the hush of a world wrapped tightly around you, in the flicker of flame against ancient walls, in the presence of others, in the smell of smoke and the feel of earth. You sleep as people have slept for centuries, wrapped in the breath of fire, dreaming in its light. You do not think of the fire as just a flame. It is more than that. It is a presence, a companion, a soft-eyed sentinel, watching over your sleep. Long after your body gives in to rest, the fire remains awake, quietly alert, humming to itself in glowing whispers. It listens to the wind pressing against the shutters. It notices when the coals fall in on themselves. It hears the fox scream in the woods far off, and the rain beginning to tap on the roof, slow and hesitant like someone unsure if they are welcome. The fire is the one thing in this house that never entirely goes out. Even when the embers fade and the room goes cold, there is always a core of warmth hidden beneath the ash, a flicker that remembers what it is to burn. Someone always knows to tend it before dawn. Your mother maybe, or your uncle. Rising from the heap of blankets with a grunt and bare feet on frozen floorboards, feeding it bits of bark and dry grass like a bird nudging its young. You've watched them do it in the dark. Their faces are always gentle in the firelight, older than usual, quieter, as if they and the flame are sharing some private thought between them. When you sleep beside the fire, you feel safer than you do at any other time. The world beyond the walls is full of things that grow teeth in the night storms that howl down from the hills. Men who carry blades, beasts that follow behind the scent of food. But fire is your boundary, your border, it says. Here is home. Here is warmth. Here is the edge of the known world. Beyond this red glow is cold and hunger and maybe fear, but here, in this orange cradle, you are permitted peace. Your dreams take on the rhythm of the flame. They do not come in bright, sharp scenes, but in slow. Glowing pulses an image of running through fields in summer. Then a fragment of laughter beside a stream, then silence, then nothing. You wake and sleep again, and do not remember which came first. It does not matter. Time turns fluid near the fire, folding back on itself like a river finding its old course again. You sleep, wake, drift, return, and all the while the coals continue their quiet breathing. Sometimes when you are not quite asleep but no longer fully awake, you hear the stories the old ones told you by the fire's edge, tales of witches and wolves and stars that fall into rivers. Stories about travelers who followed flames through the forest and came back with their hair turned white. Your grandmother used to say that fire could speak if you knew how to listen, not in words, of course, in crackles, in warmth, in the way the shadows dance. I believed her once, and maybe you still do, in a way that has no shape but lingers inside you, low and quiet. You'll remember nights when the fire was too small, when the wood was damp and wouldn't catch, and you huddled close to your siblings and shivered through long hours that felt like years. Those nights taught you how precious a steady flame could be. Never take it for granted now. You know what it means to have warmth that lasts until morning? You know what it means to be without it? The fire flickers against the underside of the rafters, tracing light onto beams darkened by centuries of smoke. The cottage breathes around you. There are pots in the corner still warm from supper, a loaf of bread wrapped in cloth on the table, and herbs drying above the lintel. Their scents mingling faintly with the wood smoke lavender, sage, thyme, and something you cannot name but know by heart. These smells are part of the fire too. They rise and swirl in its heat, twining into the fabric of your sleep. Your body has learned to stretch toward warmth in the night, to angle itself toward heat without waking. You do not need to think about it. Your limbs seek it, the way vines grow, toward sunlight, slowly, quietly, without effort. And if the fire dims, you draw your blanket tighter and curl deeper into yourself. Dreaming of summers past and mornings yet to come, the darkness outside is absolute. No starlight, no moon, no lamps on distant hills. It's just blackness, thick as wool, pressing close against the walls. But inside, there is light enough. Not much, but enough. The fire paints the room in shades of gold and rust. It touches your face with fingers of warmth. It holds you gently, like a lullaby hummed just under breath. And you, wrapped in your worn blanket, your head resting against a folded tunic or the crook of your arm, your breath rising and falling like the tide, do not fear the night. Because the fire is there, watching, waiting, keeping the long dark at bay, hour after hour, until morning comes creeping back over the edge of the world like a slow silver promise. There is no ticking in the room, no hands sweeping past numbers, no bells to mark the hours. Time here is measured in slower ways, in the settling of the logs, in the dimming of the glow. In the way the shadows stretch and shift across the low walls like tired animals finding places to sleep. The fire is the only clock you've ever needed, and its language is simple. When it is high and golden, it is early. When it is red and low, it is deep into night. When it is ash and silence, morning is near. You know this not because someone told you, but because your body learned it year after year beside this same hearth, in this same room, where the ceiling sags just a little in the middle and the stones sweat in spring. Your back has rested against this earth 1,000 times. Your cheek has pressed against this same fold in the blanket. Your dreams have curled into the same flickering orange silence. The rhythm of the fire has entered your blood, quietly, till you can wake in the middle of the night and know the hour by the warmth on your face or the chill at your toes. The fire doesn't burn in a hurry. It lingers. It smolders. It lets go slowly, and you learn to do the same. You sleep in waves. Not always deep, not always long, but always enough. There are nights when you wake and lie still, watching the fire blink lazily at you from across the room, its glow soft against the clay walls, its crackling quiet and contented. And in those moments, time feels thick and syrupy, like honey warmed on a stone. You are not waiting for anything. You are simply there, floating between sleep and waking, as the fire keeps its silent count. Sometimes you hear the chickens stir outside, feathers rustling in their sleep, or a dog shifting its weight in the straw. Sometimes a board creaks above, as if the house itself has rolled over and gone back to dreaming. These are not intrusions. These are parts of the night, as natural as breathing. It's expected, as the smoke curling upward into the rafters and vanishing through the hole in the roof. You do not wonder what time it is. The fire tells you everything you need to know. Once, years ago, you slept in a place without fire. It was cold and damp, and the air never settled right, and you remember how the dark there felt heavier, less forgiving. That night stretched long and strange, full of shifting shadows and sounds without names. You did not sleep well. You were younger then, but the memory has stayed with you. Since then, you have never truly trusted a room that does not have a fire inside it. Even in summer, when the nights are warm and the air hums with insects, you miss the fire when it's gone. You miss the way it anchors the space, the way it speaks softly while everything else sleeps, the way its warmth seems to hum through the floorboards and into your bones. In the deep of winter, its absence is unthinkable. Without it, the night becomes something colder, not just in body but in spirit, as if the dark is hungrier, closer, more eager to slip inside. You watch the fire die sometimes, not because you want it to, but because watching it fade is like watching a story come to an end, gentle, slow, inevitable. The last log leans inward, collapses into a bed of ash, and a final little flicker rises like a sigh, then vanishes. What remains is a faint red heartbeat beneath the gray. You know, it can be woken again. You trust that it will be. People say the stars mark time, that the moon moves through her phases like a great wheel turning above. But you rarely see her. Sky's hidden more often than not, and clouds are always rolling in from the hills. What you see is the fire. It's what you trust is its rhythm. The way it flares and sinks. It's the way it keeps company with the dark and teaches you, night by night, how to rest inside the silence. It is almost morning now. You can feel it, though the sky is still black. The fire is little more than breath now, a shimmer under ash. Someone will rise soon, careful and slow, and feed it with dry slivers of wood kept beside the hearth. It will catch again, like memory, like hope. It always does. The first light in the room will not be the sun, it will be the fire, blooming back into brightness, as if it had only been sleeping too. And when you open your eyes, you will see its familiar shape rising again from the coals. Steady and slow, painting the walls in gold. The room will stretch and breathe. The cold will retreat. And the day will begin, not with alarm or trumpet, but with the quiet return of warmth. And the soft red light of the fire, your oldest clock, your truest keeper of time. There are long stretches in the night when the fire makes no sound at all. There's no crack, no hiss, no sigh of settling ash, just silence so thick and gentle you feel it resting on your skin. You lie there, still beneath your blanket, eyes closed or half-lidded, listening to the nothingness between the sparks. It is a silence that hums softly with life, not empty, but full of breath and presence. Like a room where someone kind has just stepped out for a moment, but left their warmth behind. The fire's silence is not like the silence of the woods, where twigs snap under unseen feet and owls ask questions you do not want to answer. It is not like the silence of the church, heavy and distant, or the silence of the fields at dusk, wide and lonely. This silence is different. It wraps around you like an old shawl, worn and warm and known. You do not fear it. You welcome it. You settle into it like a cup into a saucer. In this silence, your thoughts slow down. They drift like ash on still air, circling gently before coming to rest. You think of nothing grand. You think of small things, how your fingers still smell faintly of onions and wood smoke, how the thread in your tunic has started to fray near the collar, how the corner of the roof creaks in wind, even when no one else hears it. These thoughts are soft and round-edged, and they carry no weight. You are not worried here. You are only noticing. You remember the stories your father used to tell in this same silence, his voice low and curling like the smoke from the chimney, his shadow flickering on the wall behind him as the fire listened with you. Stories about distant winters and deep forests, about saints who lit fires with a word and slept inside them untouched. He never rushed. He let the pauses stretch long, let the quiet settle between phrases like snow between stones. He taught you that silence is part of the story, maybe even the best part. Sometimes even now, you mouth the beginnings of those old stories to yourself in the dark, not to remember them in full, but to feel their shape again. Like smoothing your hand over the grain of a carved bowl, the fire listens still, even if your father does not speak anymore. It remembers him, the way it remembers everyone who has ever slept beside it. The fire keeps no names, but it keeps the warmth of voices, the rhythm of footsteps, the scent of each life passed by its light. Your siblings shift in their sleep nearby, blankets rustling faintly like wind in dry grass. One of them sighs, deep and low, then stills again. You know their breathing by heart. You know the way your older brother turns always toward the hearth, the way your sister tucks her knees up and curls like a comma. You do not need to see them to know they are there. The firelight paints their shadows on the wall like old cave drawings, loose and flickering, yet familiar as breath. There is no candle burning, no lamp. Only the fire and its soft silence, and the glow it offers in quiet generosity. It doesn't need to dazzle, it only needs to be. And in this stillness, you learn what enough feels like. Not plenty, not luxury, just enough a little warmth, a little light, a place to lie down, the closeness of others, and the hush between sparks where dreams begin. You think about the world beyond this room and how loud it must be in places you've never seen. Places where people never sleep in the same silence twice. Where there are voices always rising, wheels turning, bells ringing, and streets that never close their eyes. You think about how strange it would be to rest in a place like that, where the dark is not trusted. Fire is hidden behind glass, tamed until it forgets how to breathe. But here in this cottage older than memory, the fire is still wild in its quiet way. Not dangerous, not cruel, but alive. It speaks in stillness, it listens, it keeps watch. It shares the silence with you, like a friend who sits close and asks nothing. You close your eyes and feel its presence on your cheek, gentle and constant. And you think, this is what it means to belong somewhere. Sleep drapes itself over you slowly, not like a falling, but like a tide returning to shore. The silence deepens, the fire glows on. And you, wrapped in that long, ancient hush, finally let go of the last thought still floating in your mind and drift into a night that is not cold. It's not empty, not alone, but warm and slow and softly burning. You do not sleep alone. That is not how things are done here. The fire may be the heart of the room, but the bodies around it are its rib shapes curled under rough-spun blankets, breathing in the same rhythm, radiating their own small warmth in a circle of shared sleep. It is a closeness you never question. From the first night of your life, you have known the comfort of another body sleeping beside you, the sound of another breath rising and falling in the dark. You would miss it if it were gone. You would feel the space it left. There are no rooms to separate you from the others. The house is one room, or two if you are lucky, and the fire is at the center of it all. You sleep close to your mother or your brother, or the neighbor's son whose family is away and who needed a warm place to rest for the night. Sometimes a stranger lies near the door, wrapped in his own cloak, trusted enough to stay, but not yet close enough for the center. He listens to the fire like you do. The rules are unspoken but understood. The fire invites warmth, but warmth is always shared. You are all arranged around the hearth, like spokes on a wheel, heads turned toward the heat, feet away, shoulders touching now and then in sleep. There is comfort in this pattern. You do not fear the dark because it is held back by more than flame. It is held back by the nearness of others, by the low murmurs before sleep, by the knowledge that someone will stir if you stir, that someone else will notice if the fire fades. There is little privacy in this way of sleeping. You hear your brother's muttered dreams, your grandmother's cough, the soft grinding of someone's teeth. But these are not intrusions, they are reminders. You belong to a web of bodies and breath, and the night is something you share. You have no door to close, you have no bed to claim as yours alone. What you have is presence, warmth, the press of another heartbeat in the room, so steady you forget it isn't your own. Sometimes before sleep fully takes you, you turn toward the fire and watch the silhouettes of your family drawn in low red light. Their features are blurred by shadow, but you know them by shape, by the way their shoulders rise when they breathe, by the sound of a foot nudging straw or a blanket slipping from a knee. They look ancient in the firelight, timeless, as though they have always been here, just like this, gathered around the same quiet flame. There is a kind of trust in sleeping this way. You surrender yourself to the night, not as an individual, but as part of a whole. If someone stirs, others stir. If the fire grows low, someone rises. If a storm rattles the shutters, someone sits up and listens. It is not the fire alone that keeps you safe. It is the fact that no one sleeps entirely apart. That even in sleep, there is a thread connecting every breath in the room. You know this closeness would feel strange to some. You've heard talk of noble houses with separate rooms, thick curtains, feather beds, and walls to muffle the night sounds. But even in dreams, you cannot imagine what it would be like to sleep with only your own silence for company, to wake in the dark and not feel the warmth of someone beside you, to sit alone with the fire and hear only your own thoughts for hours. Here, even dreams feel shared. You drift together, rising and sinking in the same invisible sea. Your limbs growing heavy at the same pace, your minds softening like bread beside the hearth. There are nights when one person murmurs in their sleep and another answers. Half asleep themselves, words slurring softly in the firelit dark. It is not conversation, it is something older. A language spoken only between those who sleep in the same glow. And then there are the quiet kindnesses that happen while the rest of the room is dreaming. Someone pulling your blanket up over your shoulder when it slips. Someone placing another log on the fire with care so it doesn't wake the children. Someone turning your little sister onto her side to stop her snoring and then lying back down without a word. These gestures are not dramatic. They are not even remembered, but they are real. They're part of what it means to be close, to be together, not just in light but in darkness. The fire makes this possible. Its warmth invites closeness, and that closeness becomes a rhythm, and that rhythm becomes safety. You fall asleep listening to the wood crackle, to the steady breath of others, to the occasional rustle of straw or fabric, and you feel held by it all as if the night itself were a blanket, woven from warmth and flickering shadows and the soft weight of other lives resting beside your own. And when you wake hours later to the low red glow of embers and the quiet murmur of someone shifting near the hearth, you feel no fear, no confusion. Only the knowledge that you are still here, still safe, still among the living, still wrapped in warmth, still watched over by the fire and the sleep of others. You can smell the fire before you even see it. Long before you lie down, before the room dims, before the hush settles over the house like a folded cloak, the scent is already in the air, low and earthy. A slow curl of smoke mixed with wool and clay and the memory of baked bread. It weaves through your clothes, clings to your hair, settles deep into the walls and floor. It is not just a smell, it is a presence, familiar, steady. The scent of a house that has known fire for generations. The smoke is not harsh here. It does not sting the eyes, not like in the fields when someone burns brambles, not like in the forest when greenwood chokes on its own sap. This smoke is slow and soft, rises from seasoned logs that know how to burn, from coals banked carefully at day's end, From kindling dried in the sun and laid by hands that understand its language, the fire does not argue with the air it exhales. And what it gives is warmth, light, and this lingering, leathery sweetness that seeps into everything. You have grown up with this scent. It is stitched into your clothes, soaked into your blanket, buried beneath your fingernails. When you leave the house for long, into the rain, into the woods, into another village, you carry it with you like a hidden thread. It follows you down muddy roads. It settles on your skin. People can smell your home on you, even when you say nothing. They know what kind of fire you sleep beside. They know how often it is tended. And when you return, tired from travel or labor, it is the scent of the fire that welcomes you first. You step inside, and there it is, rising from the hearth, from the air, from the folds of every sleeping blanket and the seams of every beam above your head. It tells you, you are back, you are safe, you are where you belong. At night, when the house is quiet and the fire has burned low, the smell deepens. It becomes richer, fuller, a perfume of rest. You lie down and breathe it in as though it were made to carry you into sleep. You don't notice it after a while. You only notice its absence. On those rare nights when the fire has nearly died, the wood is too damp, when the coals smother themselves in ash, then the air feels thinner, colder. You breathe more carefully. Something is missing. And in the morning, everything smells wrong, like a sentence left unfinished. But most nights, the fire carries on, and the scent of it wraps around your dreams. You smell it in the corners of your sleep, where memories rise and fall in half-formed images, your father feeding the fire in silence, your mother blowing on a coal with gentle breath, your grandmother telling stories while she pokes at the embers with a stick worn smooth at one end. These are not just memories, they are rituals. They are part of the way the fire smells, part of what it becomes in the room where you sleep. Your blanket smells of smoke, so does your pillow, which is nothing more than a folded tunic. So do your hands. And in the stillness of night, when you shift slightly and the fabric crinkles near your face, you inhale it again, not sharply, not like smoke in the open air, but softly, like something aged and mellow. It calms you. It reminds you that the fire is still burning, that warmth is still here. Some say fire purifies. Some say it carries prayers. But in the small house where you sleep, fire simply lives with you. It shares your space. It listens and breathes and waits. And its scent is its voice, speaking to you even when the flames are hidden beneath ash. Even when your eyes are closed. Even when sleep has pulled you far from the waking world. And you carry this scent into morning. You rise from your blanket and stretch, and the smoke comes with you woven into your clothes, clinging to your skin. It will follow you through your chores, through the frost, through the turning of the day. And tomorrow night, when you return again to this same spot, this same hearth, this same sleeping breath of fire, the scent will still be here, waiting. Because in the end, sleeping beside a fire is not only about light and heat, it is about memory. It is about scent. The smoke remembers everything, every hand that added a log, every voice that murmured a story, every sleeper who curled beneath a blanket and breathed it in. And when you sleep beside the fire, it welcomes you not just with warmth, but with the deep, rich smell of home. You do not need much to fall asleep, just warmth and quiet, and the soft flicker of firelight painting the walls in shapes that shift and shimmer and fade. You lie on your side, eyes half closed, and the fire dances for you. It throws long shadows that bend and stretch, rising like ghosts and falling like leaves. There is no pattern to it, and yet it feels familiar, as if the shadows have been moving like this for centuries, and you are only the latest to watch them drift across the stone. The walls are uneven and the ceiling low, so the shadows find strange angles, some sharp, others slow and blurred, as if the fire is remembering something too old to speak aloud. You see a hand rise, though no hand moved. You see a flicker across the floor like a fox darting through underbrush. You see the faces of those beside you outlined in gold, only half real, made of fire and sleep. And beyond them, their shadows stretch like memories, silent and slow. There are nights when the shadows seem to tell stories. You've watched them form a stag leaping over a tree, or a knight on horseback, or a woman spinning thread with long, delicate fingers. Of course, these aren't real, just tricks of the flame, shapes made from the twitch of a burning log or the curl of smoke in the air. But you've never needed realness to believe in something. The shadows are stories, and stories are how you know the world. When you were younger, you used to reach out to touch them, curious to know if they had weight. Your hand would cut through the light, casting its own shape against the far wall. And for a moment, you became part of the fire's story. Your mother would scold you gently, warning that you'd let the warmth escape. But you'd laugh and lie back down, your fingers still tingling with orange light, and drift into sleep while the shadows kept moving. They never stop. Even when the fire burns low, the smallest flicker can send a shadow fluttering up the wall like a moth. And even when everyone is asleep, the dance goes on quiet and faithful. Moving across sleeping faces, brushing the beams, whispering along the straw-strewn floor. The fire watches, and the shadows obey. In a way, it feels as though the fire is not alone, and neither are you. The room may be small, the people few, the night long and dark, but there is company in the flickering light. There's motion and life, and a kind of quiet conversation happening in that gentle shift of brightness and blur. Cannot understand it, not exactly, but you feel it. And you know it means something. The shadows do not always comfort. Sometimes when the wind howls hard against the door or the trees groan in the distance, the shapes on the wall grow sharper, stranger. They twist into things you cannot name. You lie still and watch them, heart beating a little faster, trying to remind yourself it is only the fire, it's only the wood, only the night thinking too loudly. But the shadows know your fears. They know how to reach into the folds of your mind and pull out old stories. The ones about spirits and wolves and watchers who move through the dark with no feet. Still, you stay close to the fire. You trust its light more than the dark it throws. Even the frightening shapes are better than the endless blackness outside, where nothing moves because nothing dares to. At least here the shadows are warm. At least here they flicker in rhythm with the flame and your breath and the quiet sighs of sleeping bodies all around you. You have come to love the way the fire leaves traces behind, even after you've fallen asleep. In the morning, when the sun slants through the crooked window and the fire is no more than a bed of cool ash, you can still see the blackened edges of soot above the hearth. The smudges where smoke kissed the ceiling, the soft outline of last night's heat etched onto the stone. Even when the flames are gone, their shadows remain, and you carry them too. In your eyes, in your thoughts, in the way you dream. Sometimes your dreams feel like shadows, flickering things that vanish when you try to hold them. They are shaped by the fire. They move like its light. They speak in its hush. So you lie back, watching the wall grow gold, then rust, then quiet. The fire settles lower. The shadows fall softer. You let your eyes close, not tightly, but gently, like petals at dusk. The dance continues without you, and you drift into the slow warmth of sleep, knowing that something is always moving, always glowing, always keeping watch just beyond the edge of your dreams. It didn't happen often, but sometimes, in the deepest part of the night, the fire would die. You never heard it. There was no final crack, no sigh, no farewell. One moment it was there, flickering quietly at the edge of your sleep, and the next, the room was dark. Not just dim, not just quiet, but truly dark in the old way. The kind of darkness that breathes and leans in close. Kind of dark that remembers the world before fire was tamed. You woke not too cold exactly, but to the absence of warmth. Stillness that clung to the air, heavy and full. The kind of stillness that made you hold your breath and listen. You didn't know what you were listening for. Maybe the rustle of a log shifting. Maybe the faint groan of the wind outside. But there was nothing. Just the quiet and the cold, and the sense that something important had slipped away while you slept. The others were still breathing softly, bundled under their cloaks and furs, unaware that the fire was gone. You didn't want to wake them. It didn't feel right. The night belonged to something older now, and you moved slowly, carefully, as if walking through someone else's memory. You knelt beside the hearth. The coals were no longer red, just a gray hush where heat used to live. You reached out a hand and felt the faintest warmth, not enough to light a twig, but enough to sting your fingers with the reminder that it had once been bright. It was a strange moment, quiet, still sacred. There was no fear exactly, but a kind of reverence. The fire had been your company, your comfort, your guardian against the dark, and now it was gone. The room felt larger somehow, as if the shadows had grown brave in its absence, spilling into corners they once feared. You couldn't see the rafters anymore. You couldn't see the curve of the walls. It was all just softness and dark. In that moment, you understood how precious the flame truly was, not just for its warmth, but for its presence. It made things visible. It made the world feel held, like a lantern carried by the hand of something kind. Without it, everything loosened. Time unraveled, space drifted. You were still yourself, still in the same room, but you were also somewhere older, somewhere colder, somewhere more alone. You didn't try to relight it, not then. It wasn't the right hour for flame. The fire would wait until dawn when the sun returned and gave you permission. Until then, you wrapped your cloak tighter, pulled the fur up over your chin, and let the dark press close. You could hear your own heartbeat now, loud in your ears, steady and alive. You listened to it the way you once listened to the fire, letting it guide you back into warmth, back into your body, back into sleep. And strangely, it wasn't unbearable. It wasn't even frightening. It was just another shape of the night. A colder one, a quieter one, but still part of the rhythm of things. People had lived through nights like this for as long as there had been people. You were not the first to lie in the dark and feel the ache of fire gone out. Eventually you dreamed, not of light but of embers, of ashes that whispered, of stars cold and sharp above a sleeping earth. You dreamed of fire returning. You always did. And in the morning, when the birds began their pale, certain songs, and the light slipped in under the door like a guest too shy to knock, you sat up and saw the hearth again, gray, cracked, quiet, but not dead. You took a breath. You reached for kindling. You built it back. There was something about the flickering fire that stirred strange dreams. You never planned to dream them. You never called them in like a story or a song. They came on their own, drifting down through the warmth, drawn out by the shadows that danced on the walls and the smoke that wound its slow way into the beams. Dreams in the firelight were softer than the ones that came in full darkness. Less sharp, less cruel. They shimmered like heat above stone and faded when you reached too hard to hold them. Sometimes you dreamed of things you knew: your father's voice at the end of a long field, your mother's hands washing linen by the stream, the dog that used to sleep curled behind your knees in winters past. Sometimes it was your own face, younger or older, or not quite yours, staring back at you through the amber glow. The fire opened a door to time but never told you which way you were walking. Other times, the dreams were not yours at all. They belonged to the place, or to the fire itself. Wordless images of trees with no leaves and sky with no stars. Or voices speaking in a language that was not your own, but still made your heart ache to hear it. There were dreams that smelled of smoke and moss, dreams where snow fell in slow silken sheets, and dreams where you floated untethered, above a world you had never seen, but somehow recognized. You could never remember how these dreams ended. They slipped from your mind like smoke through a cracked window present and then not. No. But when you woke, you carried a feeling with you, a mood shaped by flame, a stillness, a weight, a strange peace. It clung to your skin like warmth left in a blanket. It followed you through the day, quiet but steady, like the echo of a bell long after it stops ringing. The fire shaped the way you dreamed, and the way you slept too. When its light played across your face, your body relaxed into the rhythms of flicker and hush. Your breath matched the rise and fall of flame. Your thoughts slowed to the pace of crackling wood. And even your fears, the little ones that gnawed at you in the dark, seemed to pause, content to wait just beyond the circle of light. And sometimes, just sometimes, when the fire was low and the world was still, you thought you could hear your dream before it came. A soft rustle, a faint hum, like the voice of the night speaking in riddles. It wasn't frightening. It felt like being invited. As if sleep were not something you fell into, but something that came to fetch you gently, one arm stretched toward the fire, the other reaching into some hidden corner of your mind. In the morning, you often forgot the dream, but never the feeling. It's the warmth on your cheek, the safety of the glowing coals, the way the light had seemed to curl protectively around the room, the way, even in sleep, the fire watched over you. And maybe that was what made all the difference. Not the heat or the light, but the sense of being watched in kindness. A guardian that did not speak, but stayed. a small sun of your own, burning bright against the weight of the long dark night. It didn't always last until morning. That gentle golden fire you'd fed with care, that little hearth flame that had whispered to your bones all night, it could fail you. It could die in silence, in the hush before the birds. When the world still held its breath and the frost was bold enough to creep inside, you'd know it before you opened your eyes. The warmth would be gone. The air, once thick with the slow breath of burning wood, would be thin and sharp, edged like a blade drawn in secret. The blanket would feel stiff, the straw beneath your back colder than you remembered. Your nose would sting, your hands would reach instinctively toward the place where the fire had been only to find the air there empty. The glow replaced by ash. The room felt different when the fire went out. Smaller or larger, or older maybe. It lost its center. Shadows grew longer, deeper, and the familiar corners became stranger. Everything seemed still, but not in a peaceful waste, still like a held breath, like something waiting. In the dark ages, when the fire went out, there was no flick of a switch to summon it back. You couldn't press a button or call a name. If you were lucky, there were embers, shy and red, tucked under the gray crust of ash. You would kneel and blow, slow and steady, coaxing life from the coals. You would feed them a twist of straw or a scrap of bark, watching closely, praying the fire still remembered how to live. If it didn't tiff, the cold had taken everything you had a choice. You could wait for light, huddled close to another sleeper, breathing into your hands, listening for the slow crackle of frost outside, or you could rise in the dark and seek help from a neighbor, carrying a lantern or a lidded pot, hoping they had kept their flame alive. There were stories of people who died when the fire went out, deep winter, in remote places, and in homes too poor or too proud to ask for help. Not from wolves or raiders, but from the slow, silent enemy that slipped in when the fire fled the cold that stiffened joints and stole breath and sang lullabies no one ever woke from. And so you learned never to take the fire for granted. You learned to tend it like a child, to watch it like a friend. You knew its moods, when it wanted more wood, when it needed stirring, when it longed for stillness. You learned its hunger and its patience, its warmth and its warning. It was a living thing, and if you cared for it, it cared for you. When the fire went out, it reminded you how much you needed it, not just for heat or cooking, but for comfort, for company. For the simple, human truth that light means safety and warmth means life. Without it, the dark was too vast, the silence too deep. The fire gave shape to the night. Without it, even your dreams seemed colder. But when it returned, when a spark caught, when a flame rose slow and golden from the ashes, it felt like forgiveness. It's like a second chance. You warmed your hands over it and felt not just heat but hope. You smiled even if no one saw. You sat close and let it remind you that you were still here, still alive, still held in the arms of a warmth older than memory. And perhaps that was the greatest gift of all. The fire never promised to last, but it taught you how to begin again. Every morning, every night, every time the cold came in, you built it back with your own hands. You made your own sun. And in the quiet hours, when the fire burned low and the world waited outside, you knew that even in the dark ages, a single flame could be enough to keep the darkness at bay.